So at that point, I was very skeptical of his ability, as I said, to lead. This was not a commercial, highly trafficked business. It was a private residency that only Nancy lived in. So he released that, and then he allowed pool cleaners and vendors were wandering all over the crime scene. So that starts putting a neon light to me. It's like, why is this guy doing this?
Hey guys, it's Jackson Buhai with TMZ here. Now, we are over 2 months now since Nancy Guthrie was initially abducted, and we have seen all kinds of things emerge from the headlines in this case. I mean, for one, we here at TMZ have received anonymous letters from people that are claiming to have abducted Nancy or know information about Nancy that want Bitcoin in return for that information. We have inconsistencies with how the investigation was initially conducted with the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI. We've spoken to expert genealogists about genealogy and how DNA could possibly lead the authorities to finding Nancy Guthrie. We've spoken to a variety of people about this case. And ultimately, what everybody wants to know is how much longer will Nancy Guthrie be missing before the authorities find them? Now, again, like I just said, we have covered a lot of possibilities, but today I want to introduce another one, which is canine and cadaver dogs, possibly being utilized by the authorities to track down Nancy Guthrie, or to at least give us some more clues about this case. So today I'm joined by Mr. Mike Gold. He is a retired lieutenant of the Nassau Police Department, and he is also one of the founding members of the NYPD Canine Unit. Mr. Gold, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about cadaver dogs and canine units in general, and how in this case they could be used to find Nancy Guthrie or further the investigation.
Right. So cadaver dogs, human remain detection dogs, are highly trained specifically for this. They're a technology, a very sophisticated technology, actually considered by the courts as a scientific instrument, because they have the ability to detect invisible odors that are not detectable by humans. So they're highly trained. They should have been utilized in this case. The sheriff's decision not to use them is baffling to me. I've been a critic of his since day one, since his first press conference, for many of the decisions that he made. But ultimately, the one, because this is my area of expertise, the use of cadaver dogs, human remain detection dogs, as I said, they have night vision, scotopic vision. They could go out in all kinds of environments. And for him to put them, I think I'm going to paraphrase, but I think he said we're going to put them on hold for now, which to me makes no sense. There's volunteer organizations, search and rescue dog organizations all over the country, volunteers, not costing any money. And this is what they do. They train regularly to find human remains. And they're very good at it. And in my mind, they're going to be instrumental in recovering Nancy, who sadly I predicted lost her life very early on in this incident because of her age, her medical condition. So, the sheriff, in my opinion, like I said, his ego, his frankly, ego, political aspirations, but it really boils down to incompetency, because he never delegated. He just made decisions. He doesn't delegate to people that know what they're doing. He could take credit for it, but he's not demonstrating the proper leadership for the men and women of the sheriff's department.
Would you say that it was incompetency that led him astray from using cadaver dogs in this investigation?
Well, frankly, when he released the crime scene, very prematurely. It was a residential house. There was no reason to release the crime scene. So at that point, I was very skeptical of his ability, as I said, to lead. This was not a commercial, highly trafficked business. It was a private residency that only Nancy lived in. So he released that, and then he allowed pool cleaners and vendors were wandering all over the crime scene. So that starts putting a neon light to me. It's like, why is this guy doing this? Then he never addressed the media. He did early on, but he actually criticized the media and the public for doing their job. So it was very strange, very odd. Most police departments have public information offices that are trained to interact with the media, because we all know in law enforcement that the public and media solve crimes. We're partners in the media and the public are partners with law enforcement. They don't have to divulge every aspect of an investigation. But people shouldn't have to be asking me these things. The sheriff should be here telling you why he didn't use cadaver dogs, why he released the crime scene prematurely, why he pours fuel on conspiracy issues. When he's interviewed, he tells the press, "Your guess is as good as mine." That's not he's answering questions with questions, and he's just making you leave scratching your head. Mm-hmm. So it's very unprofessional, to say the least. I go to incompetency, and if I really wanted to go further, I'd say it's malfeasance.
If you were spearheading this investigation, what might have you done differently than Sheriff Nanos in this instance?
Right, absolutely. So the first thing you have to do is recognize your strengths and weaknesses. Nobody, including myself, are homicide investigators, crime scene investigators, media relation experts. You have to delegate. So he had the option coming out of the gate to delegate to people that knew what they were doing. If they didn't have the resources, the Arizona State Police would, the FBI does. They're surrounded by people that would want nothing more than to help him. But he allowed his ego, and again, he wanted to be out in front of this. He pushed everybody else aside. So I would delegate. I'd get the proper people involved and support them rather than distract the media and everyone else.
How could the use of canines or cadaver dogs from the get-go have furthered the investigation to a point where we might have found Nancy Guthrie?
Right. So there's all types of dogs. There's specialists. The different types of dogs. There's evidence recovery dogs. There's narcotics dogs, obviously, explosive dogs. They're all trained for a specific specialty. So in this case, originally they should have the use of evidence recovery dogs would have been very good. Trailing dogs. The problem is that when you use human eyes to look for things, you don't really know what you're looking for. So all of these dogs are, as I said, are considered scientific instruments when they're properly trained. They can find and detect odors that are invisible to you and I. And it's a hard concept for people to understand. So I think there's a natural reluctance to use dogs, because if you haven't seen them work and perform what they do, you're probably hesitant to see it. But those people that have seen dogs work, it's almost magical, their ability. They can outdo helicopters. They obviously can outdo human eyes because they see the world with their nose. Invisible molecules, that's what they're smelling. Invisible molecules. And you can't do that walking through the woods looking down.
That's very interesting. Have you ever been involved in a case such as this one where canines have been used to find a missing person?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what dogs do. So dogs are trained, as I said, to go look for whatever they're trained to do. In fact, this fall, I'm going to be looking for a woman missing for 25 years. She was missing since 9/11. She was missing, presumed killed during 9/11, upstate New York. 25 years ago, we're going to be using cadaver dogs, human remains dogs, to look with new DNA evidence, with new investigative tools. We're going to back to this cold case, and we're going to look at a very specific area in upstate New York for the remains of this woman named Michelle Harris, who disappeared on 9/11. So to answer your question is, yeah, all crime scenes, serious crime should have dogs involved, whether it's to locate evidence of missing persons. Obviously, we know dogs are trained to find missing persons. We know they've apprehended criminals that have escaped from prison. So yeah, it's just a technology that's not used. I'm not saying that this would be the thing that solves this case, but not to use dogs to look for her now, it defies logic to me. I don't know why that you would make that decision. So when you think about how instrumental dogs are in our society, sometimes we just walk by them and we just see them as dogs. We don't understand what the courts understand. As I said, the courts recognize them as scientific instruments that can develop probable cause for warrantless searches. It's the only scientific instrument that can establish probable cause for narcotics investigations and conducting warrantless searches.
Interesting. And so it sounds like what you're intimating is that even now, even at this point in the case, nearly 2 months since the abduction, if we did utilize those dogs, there would be a chance that we could further the investigation. And I'm wondering, even though the crime scene has laid dormant for 2 months now, um, in what ways could we utilize dogs in this very instance? Could you give me some examples?
Right. So sadly, this is a recovery. It's not a rescue in my mind. I think even the family has come to terms with the fact that Nancy is deceased. So you have to find, by discovering her remains, you'll also find evidence, DNA evidence. You might find ligatures. You might find a number of evidentiary pieces of evidence that would be instrumental. And there's no time limit on this. As I said, I'm going to be looking for the remains of somebody missing 25 years ago. Right here on Long Island is the Gilgo Beach murderer. The dogs are being used to recover remains all the time of crimes that took place 10 years ago. So it's a very, so to answer your question, the dogs could be deployed right now. I believe that her remains, if we go by historical data, will be relatively close to the crime scene, within 5 miles or so. And you just have to look and you search and you develop patterns, grid patterns, and yeah. But the dogs are the tool, the investigative tool needed in this case.
Mr. Gold, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jackson.